There's a reason you've always felt different. There's a reason conversations about the weather leave you feeling empty, while discussions about the meaning of existence light you up from the inside. There's a reason you can sense what people aren't saying, why you notice details others miss, why you need more time alone to process the world than seems normal to everyone around you. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why your mind works this way and why it's actually proof of something extraordinary. For years, you've probably been told to tone it down, to be more practical, to stop being so intense, so complicated, so much. You've learned to apologize for your depth, to dim your curiosity, to shrink your natural way of being to fit into spaces that were never designed for minds like yours. But what if everything you've been made to feel ashamed of is actually evidence of something rare? What if your psychological makeup represents a level of mental sophistication that exists in less than 5% of the population? You haven't been broken. You haven't been too sensitive. You haven't been overthinking your way through life because something is wrong with you. You've been operating with what psychologists call an integrated consciousness. Your mind naturally moves between different levels of awareness, processing information through multiple channels at the same time. Most people develop a few of these channels. You've developed pathways that many never access in their entire lifetime. Carl Jung, who first studied these patterns, discovered that certain individuals possess what he called psychological complexity. Not complexity as in complicated or difficult, but complexity as in richness, depth, awareness that operates on multiple levels. Think of it like having access to more colors when everyone else is working with a basic palette. While others might see in primary colors, you see gradients, subtleties, nuances that create an entirely different picture of reality. This isn't better or worse than how others experience life. It's simply different, rarer, more detailed. But here's what makes this both a gift and a challenge. The world wasn't designed for this kind of mind. Society runs on simple systems, clear categories, predictable responses. When you naturally operate in nuance, when you see the gray areas that others miss, when you feel the emotional undertones that most people never register, you can feel like you're speaking a different language. This is where the confusion begins. This is where you start to wonder if something is wrong with you instead of recognizing that something is rare about you. Today, we're going to explore 8 clear signs that you possess this psychological complexity, 8 indicators that your mind works in ways that most people will never experience. 8 pieces of evidence that what you've been carrying isn't a burden to be fixed, but a capacity to be understood and honored. Everyone's been telling you to tone it down your whole life, to stop overthinking, to be more normal. But what if being too much is actually evidence that your mind works in ways most people will never experience? The first sign of your rare psychological makeup is something that probably gets you in trouble more often than it helps you. You see patterns everywhere. While others look at a situation and see what's happening right now, you see the underlying structure. You see how this moment connects to what happened last week, last month, last year. You see the cycles people repeat without realizing it. You see the emotional patterns that play out in relationships, families, workplaces, entire cultures. This isn't just being observant. This is your mind operating like a psychological radar, constantly scanning for connections, relationships, and meanings that exist beneath the surface. Most people process information in a linear way. A leads to B, leads to C. Your mind processes information in a web-like pattern, where A connects to B, D, F, and Z simultaneously. When someone tells you about their relationship problems, you don't just hear the story they're telling. You hear the story behind the story. You recognize the dynamic they're describing because you've seen it before, not necessarily in relationships, but in the way they interact with authority figures, the way they talk about their childhood, the way they handle conflict in general. This pattern recognition extends to everything. You walk into a room and immediately sense the emotional atmosphere. You can tell when someone is upset, even when they're smiling. You notice when group dynamics shift. You pick up on the unspoken tensions, the hidden agendas, the things people are trying not to say. Jung called this capacity intuitive perception. He discovered that certain individuals possess an enhanced ability to perceive the underlying patterns and connections that govern human behavior. Jung realized that this wasn't just being intuitive, it was operating with a completely different kind of mental processing. Your pattern recognition works like having access to a database of human behavior that most people don't even know exists. You've unconsciously catalogued thousands of interactions, emotional responses, behavioral patterns, and social dynamics. When you encounter something new, your mind automatically searches this database for matches, connections, similar patterns. This is why you can often predict how situations will unfold. This is why you sometimes know what someone is going to say before they say it. This is why you can sense when someone is lying, not because you're judgmental, but because their words don't match the pattern of truth that you've learned to recognize. But here's where this gift becomes complicated. Most people don't operate this way. When you try to explain what you're seeing, when you point out patterns that seem obvious to you, others often can't see what you're talking about. They might think you're reading too much into things, being paranoid, or making connections that don't exist. This leaves you in a strange position. You're constantly seeing things that others miss, but you learn to keep these observations to yourself because sharing them makes people uncomfortable. You start to doubt your own perceptions. You begin to wonder if you really are overthinking everything. The truth is, you're not overthinking. You're thinking in a fundamentally different way. Your mind naturally processes multiple layers of information simultaneously. While others focus on the content of what's happening, you're also processing the context, the subtext, the emotional undertones, and the broader patterns all at once. This is both a gift and a burden. The gift is that you understand human behavior at a level that allows you to navigate complex social situations, help people see their blind spots, and anticipate problems before they become crises. The burden is that you're often the only one who sees what you see, which can be incredibly isolating. But understanding that this is how your mind works changes everything. Instead of apologizing for seeing patterns that others miss, you can start to value this capacity for what it is, a rare form of intelligence that allows you to perceive reality at a deeper level than most people ever will. You know that feeling when everyone around you seems satisfied with surface-level conversations while you're dying for something real? When small talk feels like torture, but deep discussions light you up? There's a psychological reason for that. The second sign of your rare personality type is emotional intensity that goes far beyond what most people experience. I'm not talking about being dramatic or unstable. I'm talking about feeling emotions with a depth and richness that can be overwhelming even to you. When you're happy, you don't just feel good. You feel like every cell in your body is vibrating with joy. When you're moved by music, art, or beauty, it's not just appreciation, it's like being struck by lightning. When you're sad, it's not just disappointment. It's like grief for all the possibilities that won't come to pass. Your emotional range operates on a completely different scale than most people. Where others might feel emotions in shades of grey, you experience them in vivid technicolor. This isn't because you're more sensitive or fragile. It's because your emotional processing system is naturally more complex and sophisticated. Most people have what psychologists call emotional buffers, unconscious mechanisms that filter and moderate their emotional responses. You have fewer of these buffers, which means you experience emotions closer to their raw, unfiltered state. This gives you access to emotional information that others never receive. Think of it like having higher resolution emotional vision. While others see emotional situations in standard definition, you see them in 4K. You pick up subtle variations in mood, micro-expressions, energy shifts that barely register for most people. You can sense when someone is pretending to be okay when they're actually struggling, not because you're psychic, but because you're processing emotional data that others don't even notice. This emotional intensity extends to your relationship with ideas, concepts, and experiences. You don't just find things interesting, you become fascinated, consumed, deeply engaged. When you discover something that resonates with you, whether it's a book, a philosophy, a cause, or a creative pursuit, you don't just enjoy it, you dive in completely. Others might call this obsessive, but it's actually a sign of your capacity for deep engagement. Your mind doesn't just skim the surface of experiences, it plunges into the depths. This is why you can become so absorbed in learning about something that hours pass without you noticing. This is why you can work on projects with an intensity that others find exhausting just to watch. But this emotional intensity comes with challenges. In a world that often values emotional restraint and keeping it together, your natural emotional range can make others uncomfortable. People might tell you you're too much, that you care too deeply, that you need to lighten up or not take things so seriously. You've probably learned to hide this intensity, to tone down your enthusiasm, to moderate your emotional responses to make others more comfortable. You might have developed a kind of emotional mask that you wear in public, showing only the socially acceptable level of feeling while keeping your true emotional experience private. This hiding takes enormous energy. It's exhausting to constantly monitor and adjust your emotional expression to fit what others expect. Over time, this can lead to feeling disconnected from your authentic self and wondering if there's something wrong with how deeply you feel everything. The truth is, your emotional intensity is not a flaw to be managed. It's a superpower to be understood and honored. Your capacity to feel deeply is what allows you to create meaningful connections, to be moved by beauty, to care about causes that matter, to experience life with a richness that most people never access. Your emotional intensity is also what makes you incredibly empathetic. Because you feel your own emotions so deeply, you can recognize and understand the emotions of others with unusual accuracy. You can sit with people in their pain because you know what real pain feels like. You can celebrate their joy because you understand the full spectrum of happiness. This emotional sophistication is rare. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid or minimize difficult emotions. You've learned to feel them fully, which gives you a kind of emotional wisdom that can't be taught from books or gained through intellectual understanding alone. What if everything you hate about yourself, your sensitivity, your intensity, your need for depth, isn't something wrong with you, but something incredibly rare about you? The third sign of your exceptional psychological makeup is a deep, non-negotiable need for solitude that goes far beyond normal introversion. You don't just prefer being alone sometimes, you require it for your psychological well-being. Without regular periods of solitude, you start to feel overwhelmed, fragmented, like you're losing yourself. This isn't antisocial behavior or depression. This is your mind's way of processing the incredible amount of information and stimulation it takes in every day. Most people recharge by being around others or through external activities. You recharge by going inward. Your alone time isn't just rest, it's active psychological processing. During these periods of solitude, your mind is doing important work, integrating experiences, making connections, processing emotions, and restoring your capacity to engage with the world. Think of your mind like a sophisticated computer that's constantly running multiple programs. While others might run a few basic applications, your mental operating system is complex, with many processes running simultaneously. Just like a computer, you need regular maintenance time to organize files, clear cache, and prevent system overload. Your need for solitude is actually a sign of psychological sophistication. It means your mind is processing information at a level that requires deliberate downtime to function optimally. You're not avoiding people because you don't like them. You're creating space for your mind to do the deep work it's designed to do. During your alone time, you might find yourself thinking about conversations from weeks ago, suddenly understanding something someone said that didn't make sense at the time. You might replay social interactions, not because you're worried about them, but because your mind is extracting lessons, patterns, and insights that weren't immediately obvious. This is why small talk and superficial social interactions are so draining for you. Your mind is constantly trying to find meaning, depth, and connection in every interaction. When forced to engage in conversations that don't offer this, it's like being hungry but only having access to empty calories. It takes energy without providing the nourishment your mind craves. People often misinterpret your need for solitude as being unfriendly, antisocial, or even stuck up. They might pressure you to be more social, to attend more events, to be more available. But pushing yourself to be social when you need solitude is like forcing yourself to run when your body needs sleep. It might be possible in the short term, but it's ultimately counterproductive. Your solitude serves another important function. It's where your creativity and insight emerge. Most of your best ideas, your deepest realizations, your moments of clarity happen when you're alone. This is because your mind needs quiet space to make the connections and see the patterns that lead to genuine understanding. Block 5. Sign 4. The attraction to complexity. Less than 5% of people have the type of mind you have. The same mind that makes you feel like an outsider is actually operating on a level of consciousness most humans never reach. The fourth sign of your rare psychological type is a natural attraction to complexity that others find overwhelming or unnecessary. Where most people prefer simple explanations, clear categories, and straightforward solutions, you're drawn to nuance, ambiguity, and multifaceted perspectives. You instinctively understand that most important questions don't have simple answers, that most problems can't be solved with quick fixes, that most situations contain multiple layers of truth. When others want to know if something is good or bad, right or wrong, true or false, you see the gray areas. You understand that most things exist on a spectrum rather than in binary categories. This makes you excellent at seeing multiple sides of an issue, but it can also make decision-making more challenging because you see the validity in competing perspectives. Your mind naturally gravitates towards subjects that have depth and complexity. You might be fascinated by psychology, philosophy, literature, art, science, or any field that offers layers of meaning to explore. You don't just want to know what happened, you want to understand why it happened, how it connects to other things, what it means in a broader context. This attraction to complexity extends to your relationships. You're not satisfied with surface-level connections. You want to understand people deeply, their motivations, their fears, their dreams, their internal contradictions. You're drawn to people who have depth, who can engage in meaningful conversations, who aren't afraid to explore difficult topics. Others might find your questions too deep, your interests too abstract, your way of thinking too complicated. They might tell you to keep things simple, to not overthink everything, to accept things at face value. But for you, staying on the surface feels like living in a world that's been drained of color. Your attraction to complexity is actually a sign of intellectual sophistication. Your mind is designed to handle multiple variables, competing theories, and abstract concepts simultaneously. This is why you can appreciate art that others find confusing, understand theories that others find too complicated, and see beauty in things that others find chaotic. This complexity-seeking nature also makes you excellent at problem-solving, particularly when dealing with issues that don't have obvious solutions. While others might get frustrated when simple approaches don't work, you thrive in situations that require creative, multidimensional thinking. However, living in a world that often values simplicity over accuracy can be challenging. You might find yourself constantly having to translate your complex understanding into simpler terms for others. You might feel pressure to dumb down your thoughts, to provide black and white answers to questions that you know have gray area solutions. If you've always felt like you're too much for most people, too deep, too intense, too complicated, what if I told you that's actually proof you have one of the rarest personality types on the planet? The fifth sign of your exceptional psychological makeup is a relationship with perfectionism that goes beyond simply wanting things to be done well. Your perfectionism isn't about being controlling or obsessive. It's about having an internal standard of excellence that's so high it sometimes paralyzes you. You can see the gap between what is and what could be with startling clarity, and this vision drives you to constantly strive for improvement, refinement, and mastery. When you work on something, whether it's a project, a skill, or a relationship, you don't just want it to be good enough. You want it to reach its full potential. You can envision the ideal version so clearly that anything less feels like settling. This is why you might spend hours perfecting something that others would consider finished after minutes. Your perfectionism extends to your self-development. You're constantly working on becoming a better version of yourself. You read, you study, you reflect, you analyze your behavior and motivations. You're never satisfied with staying the same because you can always see ways to grow, improve, and evolve. This drive for excellence is actually a manifestation of your deep respect for potential. You see what things could become, what people could achieve, what situations could develop into. Your perfectionism is really your refusal to waste potential, whether it's your own or something you're working on. But this gift comes with a shadow side. Your ability to see the ideal can make it difficult to appreciate what's good enough. You might struggle with procrastination because you know you can't achieve the perfect version you envision. You might be overly critical of your own work, focusing on the flaws rather than celebrating the accomplishments. Others might not understand your standards. They might think you're being unnecessarily difficult when you want to revise something one more time, add another layer of depth, or explore one more possibility. They might tell you that good enough is good enough, but your mind rebels against settling for less than what's possible. Your perfectionist tendency also applies to how you want to be understood and appreciated. You don't just want people to like you. You want them to see and appreciate the real you. You want your contributions to be recognized for their depth and quality. You want your relationships to reach their full potential for intimacy and understanding. This is why superficial appreciation can actually feel worse than no appreciation at all. When someone compliments you on something surface level while missing the deeper qualities you value about yourself, it can feel like they don't really see you at all. You know that feeling when everyone around you seems satisfied with surface-level conversations while you're dying for something real. When small talk feels like torture but deep discussions light you up. There's a psychological reason for that. The sixth sign of your rare psychological type is your natural ability to generate insights and see connections that others miss entirely. Your mind doesn't just process information, it transforms it. You take experiences, observations, and knowledge and synthesize them into understanding that goes beyond the sum of their parts. This is why you often have aha moments where suddenly everything clicks into place, where you see a truth that feels both surprising and inevitable. These insights don't come from trying harder or being smarter. They emerge from your mind's natural tendency to look for deeper patterns and meanings. While others might see individual events or isolated facts, you automatically look for the underlying principles, the connecting threads, the bigger picture. You might find yourself understanding things about people, situations, or concepts that you couldn't explain if someone asked you how you know. This isn't mystical intuition. It's your unconscious mind making connections between thousands of subtle observations and storing them in your conscious awareness as sudden understanding. Your insight generation often manifests as being able to see potential problems before they occur, understanding the real reasons behind people's behavior, or grasping the essence of complex situations quickly. Others might be impressed by your ability to read people or situations, but to you it feels natural and obvious. This capacity for insight makes you valuable in any situation that requires understanding rather than just information. You can cut through confusion to see what's really happening. You can identify the core issues that others get distracted from by surface symptoms. You can see solutions that others miss because they're focused on the obvious approaches. But your insight generation can also be isolating. When you see things that others don't see, when you understand dynamics that others miss, when you predict outcomes that others think are impossible, It can feel like you're living in a different reality than everyone else. You might find yourself biting your tongue in meetings, conversations, or social situations because you can see where things are heading, but know that others aren't ready to hear it. You might have learned to keep your insights to yourself because sharing them too early makes people uncomfortable or defensive. What if being too much is actually evidence that your mind works in ways most people will never experience? The seventh sign of your exceptional psychological makeup is a deep, persistent engagement with existential questions that most people avoid or dismiss. You don't just wonder about the meaning of life occasionally, you wrestle with questions of purpose, mortality, consciousness, and significance regularly. These aren't intellectual exercises for you. They're genuine inquiries that arise from your natural need to understand your place in the larger scheme of existence. While others might be content to focus on practical concerns, career, relationships, daily responsibilities, you find yourself regularly pulled into contemplation of deeper questions. Why are we here? What happens after death? What is consciousness? How should we live? What really matters? These questions aren't depressing or morbid to you. They're energizing. Exploring the big questions of existence gives your life meaning and direction. You're not satisfied with surface-level answers or conventional wisdom. You want to examine these questions from multiple angles, to consider different philosophical perspectives, to really grapple with the mystery of being human. Your existential orientation also makes you acutely aware of time and mortality in ways that others find uncomfortable. You might feel a sense of urgency about making your life meaningful, about not wasting time on things that don't matter, about leaving some kind of positive impact on the world. This awareness can make you impatient with small talk, office politics, celebrity gossip, and other activities that feel trivial in the context of our brief existence. It's not that you think you're better than these things. It's that your mind naturally gravitates toward what feels significant and meaningful. Your existential questioning often leads to a kind of wisdom that comes from genuinely considering life's biggest questions. You develop perspectives on suffering, joy, relationships, and purpose that have depth because they've been tested against fundamental questions about what it means to be human. Others might find your existential focus heavy or depressing, but for you, it's essential. These questions and explorations are what make life feel worth living. They're what give your daily activities context and meaning. Less than 5% of people have the type of mind you have. The same mind that makes you feel like an outsider is actually operating on a level of consciousness most humans never reach. The eighth and final sign of your rare personality type is an uncompromising commitment to authenticity that others often find challenging or threatening. You can't fake who you are. You've probably tried, especially when you were younger, but it never worked for long. There's something in you that rebels against pretending to be someone you're not, even when being authentic makes your life more difficult. This authenticity isn't just about being honest, it's about living in alignment with your deepest values, expressing your true thoughts and feelings, and refusing to compromise your core self to fit in or please others. You'd rather be disliked for who you really are than liked for who you're pretending to be. Your commitment to authenticity extends to how you engage with ideas, relationships, and experiences. You can't pretend to agree with something you don't believe. You can't maintain friendships that require you to be someone you're not. You can't stay in situations that demand you compromise your values. This makes you incredibly trustworthy because people know that what they see is what they get. When you say something, you mean it. When you commit to something, you follow through. When you care about someone, it's genuine. But your authenticity can also make others uncomfortable. In a world where many people present carefully curated versions of themselves, your willingness to be real, vulnerable, and honest can feel threatening. Some people might try to convince you to be more diplomatic, more strategic, more willing to play social games. Your authentic living also means you're constantly growing and evolving. Because you're not attached to maintaining a false image, you're free to change, learn, and develop. You can admit when you're wrong, Adjust your perspectives when you learn new information and grow in directions that feel true to who you're becoming. This authenticity is perhaps the greatest gift of your rare personality type. While others struggle with identity confusion, imposter syndrome, and the exhaustion of maintaining false personas, you have the clarity and courage to be yourself. This authenticity is what allows all your other gifts, your pattern recognition, emotional intensity, need for solitude, attraction to complexity, perfectionism, insight generation, and existential questioning, to work together in service of a life that feels genuinely meaningful. Now you understand why you've always felt different. These 8 signs aren't flaws to be fixed or quirks to be managed. They're evidence of a psychological sophistication that exists in less than 5% of the population. Your mind operates in ways that most people will never experience, processes information at levels most people will never reach, and engages with life at depths most people will never explore. You're not too much, you're not too sensitive, you're not too intense or too complicated or too deep. You're rare, and the world needs what you have to offer, even if it doesn't always know how to appreciate it. The question isn't how to become more like everyone else. The question is how to honor and develop the exceptional psychological gifts you've been given. How to find your people, the others who operate at your level of depth and intensity. How to create a life that allows your authentic self to flourish. You've spent enough time trying to fit in. Now it's time to stand out for all the right reasons. I hope this video helped you understand why your mind works the way it does and why that's actually something to celebrate. If this resonated with you, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. And if this genuinely shifted how you see yourself, if you're walking away feeling understood rather than misunderstood, consider showing your support with a super thanks. It means a lot and helps me continue creating content for people like us. Thank you for taking the time to watch. I'm grateful you're here.